Hey, this is Sean with Torch Media, and for whatever reason, here we are at the Windsor Orchid Society. Let's go check it out.
Well, you'll see orchids here today that you will probably not see anywhere else. There's a variety of hybrids and a variety of species. They represent the interest of orchid hobbyists who may be windowsill orchid growers or may even have greenhouses. These are folks that are devoted to the culture of orchids.
Have there been any orchid-related crimes, like a orchid heist, anything like that?
Some orchid hunters, they would actually, in order to maintain a value to the orchids that they had actually removed from their natural habitat, they would actually destroy then a whole area, a growing area of orchids to sort of create an artificial higher value for orchids. A very, very interesting reading. I'm currently reading a book called Orchid Fever.
Now, orchid fever, to me, it illustrates an idea of like a need for orchids. Is that what the book is about, or?
People that grow orchids, they really love them, and they love them for different reasons. And I think it's almost like a passion for anything. Are you a collector?
Oh yeah, I collect all sorts of stuff, comic books. Yeah.
Sure. So do you have comic fever?
Not recently, but I when I was younger, yeah, absolutely.
Does it ebb and wane?
Absolutely, yeah.
For some orchids, it's the same. And it's their area of interest, it's their specialty, it is their life.
All right, I'm here with Simon, who's going to protect us from the throes of orchid fever. Simon, you're security here, correct?
Yes.
Now, as security, what are you looking out for?
Making sure people that buy plants don't bring them into this area.
Okay.
Food and drinks, that sort of thing.
Have you had to stop anyone recently?
Yes, a few.
What is your method? Chokehold, hammer fist, axe kick, question mark kick? That's one of my favorites.
I mostly just ask them.
Ah, the mind game. I'm here with Deb Boersma of the Windsor Orchid Society, who's going to tell us a little bit about the history of the Orchid Society. Deb?
Yes, the Orchid Society's been around for about 30 years. It started with about 4 founding members back in the early 80s. It's grown to about 60 members, and essentially our mandate is to educate people on orchid culture. You know, orchids are disappearing quickly in the wild, so of course we want to try and preserve them.
Do you come on hard? Do you have good cop, bad cop, or are you both at the same time?
I'm a little bit of both.
I like it. What are you now? You seem good cop, but you got the eye of the bad cop.
I think I'm more bad cop.
Orchid Hotbox. So we're here with Jay, who's going to tell us about his display that he's created here.
Well, it's really to mimic the high altitude plants. So a lot of the things that I like growing, the miniatures grow at 2,500 meters, so it's significantly colder, especially at night, and very humid. So there's a climate controlled case, and that keeps them happy. Otherwise, if it gets too warm, the plants don't last long at all.
Now, where would we find these plants native in the wild?
Well, the really brightly colored dendrobiums that are in there, they're from Papua New Guinea. A lot of the other little guys, they're South American, so Central America down through South America, Ecuador, Peru.
All right, Jay, now once you've created your display, how hard is it to keep alive?
It really depends. The biggest problem is that the refrigeration unit removes all the moisture, so they do tend to dry quickly. I still have to water them, mist them every 2 days at least, and that's even with the humidifier running.
All right, now as the bad cop, I want you to look around. I want you to tell me, who do you think is going to be the first person you're going to have to take down?
Probably that old lady over there.
The old lady? What now, with your security-driven eyes, what about this old lady makes you think that she's the high-value target here?
She just looks untrustworthy.
The eyes?
Yeah, the eyes.
The eyes always have it. The eyes are the windows of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew you were a bad cop right now.
Sure.
Doug, what can you tell me about orchid hunting in South America?
It's a real delight. The first time I went orchid hunting in Ecuador and Peru was back about 2002, and I'd never been in the jungle before, and it was just, I was blown away by it. I thought the snakes would take me over, but it's just nothing like going into the jungle. It's another world there. My orchid hobby is really an extension of going to the jungle.
Did you know that the vanilla bean is actually from an orchid? It's the seed pod.
I had no idea the vanilla was an orchid.
So with some folks, the word orchid brings to mind exotic things and sort of an unknown world. And though that may be in some cases, orchids are all around us.
Now, when you go into the jungle outside of snakes, what are the other dangers that you could find there? Potentially other orchid hunters, or?
Yeah, there's other orchid hunters, but it's not really so bad. Actually, it's nice visiting these places that is not as threatening as I once thought it would be. And like I say, I'm a commercial person, but really it's a hobby out of control. And that's really where you're having fun, is when it's a hobby.
Right. Now, I've heard the term orchid fever as well as orchid addiction. Would you describe it as that as well?
Well, I don't know about orchid fever, but I went from one plant to 12,000 plants in a few years, so it really got out of control.
So what can you tell us about being an orchid vendor?
作为 vendor， 你感觉如何？
我觉得我很喜欢这个 society. Sorry, my English not well. I like this society. It's the vendor. It's the very busy. I like it here. It's the customer. It's nice.
And what is unique or special about Chinese orchids?
你觉得那个它为什么比较特别？就是中国兰花为什么比较特别
？The leaf the different and the smell is very strong and easy care. Yeah.
Is there anything that you could tell us about orchid breeding or the hybrid orchids or anything like that?
We do some of our own breeding. It really is only worthwhile when you have some breeding plants that can add something to the mix. And we do have some state-of-the-art material in some areas that we breed with. Some of the other stuff, it's cheaper for us to buy stuff out of Taiwan because they do a better job at that.
You know, an AOS, an American Orchid Society judge, trains for anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And it's a personal commitment. These judges in training go all over to shows, are part of teams. They learn there's a prescribed actually program for them to follow in doing that. And you know, they do this all at their own expense.
Really? I'm here with John Doherty, one of the judges of the Windsor Orchid Society, who's going to tell us what it takes to be a Orchid Society judge, as well as what one looks for when you judge an orchid.
Sure. There's two kind of levels of judging when it comes to a show like this. There's what we call ribbon judging, which is basically an evaluation of all the plants that are in a room at that moment. The second level of judging, which is actually occurring for the rest of the afternoon behind the curtain over there, is the American Orchid Society judging system. And that is actually an international judging system where plants that are very exceptional that are here today are selected out and further researched, measured, assessed in much closer detail. And they're compared against an international standard, which is set by the American Orchid Society.
And real quick, the most expensive orchid sale, do you know what that is? How much that would be?
The most expensive orchid that I know of was a Cattleya, and it was sold for $500,000 to a buyer, to a grower in Japan. That was a number of years ago. The most money I've spent on an orchid was a little over $1,000. And I killed it 6 months later. It was dead as a doornail. Well, I was giddy when I first bought it. You pay $10 a leaf spread inch, and so over $1,000, and I killed it by overwatering it. And so I was devastated, but you make money back on dividing plants, so it all comes out in the wash.
So in what way could one cheat at an orchid contest or an orchid judging?
I'd say in general, unlike the Olympics where performance-enhancing substances are not allowed,
right?
It's no holds barred for horticulture.
Okay.
So truly though, we're talking fertilizer. We're growing plants here.
There's very little violence at an orchid festival.
You know, not that often you see fistfights break out, although, that's a good point. Oftentimes people get into fights over a plant.
Really?
So let's say I've got a select division of a rare hybrid. I've only got one available. Somebody will come, pick it up, and then they might look at something else and somebody scoops it. And then you get a lot of arguing and pretty heated debate over who gets the right to buy that specific plant.
So here at the Windsor Orchid Society, we've ripped back the veil of criminal activities, of performance-enhancing drugs, South American hunting, and of course, mist boxes. This is Sean with Torch Media. I'll see you later.